The Spirit, the source of all inspiration. Introduction. All the inspiration that gives rise to creation flows from the Spirit. Those who are caught up in materialism struggle to grasp this truth, as it can only be understood through the Spirit. Where do you think the inspirations you experience come from? Whether you're struck by a brilliant idea, a profound realization, or a surge of creativity, what if I told you that the spark behind it all doesn't just arise from within, but from a much greater source, one that transcends the physical world altogether? In fact, the most profound, life-altering inspirations are born not of the material realm, but from spirit, the very essence of divine existence. It is here in the boundless and eternal spirit world that all creativity, insight, and purpose originate. In the busyness of everyday life, it's easy to forget that we are more than just physical beings. We often search for motivation and insight within the confines of our own minds, relying on logic or worldly experiences to guide us. But the truth is, the most transformative moments of inspiration, the ones that move us to create, to love, to heal, come from something much deeper. They stem from our inherent connection to spirit, a connection that is often overlooked, but is always there, waiting to be realized. The spirit is like the ocean, vast and infinite, while we as individuals are like drops of water within it. We are distinct, yet inseparably one with this larger body. Our individual inspirations are not merely products of our limited human faculties, but rather expressions of the divine flow of spirit that envelops us. When we tap into this connection, we begin to realize that our ideas, our creativity, our very sense of purpose are not isolated experiences, but a part of a much larger spiritual continuum. Spirit, as the ultimate source of all existence, is also the wellspring of all inspiration. It sustains us, just as the ocean sustains every drop within it. When we recognize that we are of spirit, we open ourselves to an endless reservoir of inspiration that is far beyond the constraints of the material world. This understanding frees us from the narrow confines of self-reliance and limited thinking. We begin to see that true creativity and insight come not from toiling in isolation, but from surrendering to the divine guidance and flow of spirit, which is always available to us. We understand that the earthly world, with all of its diversions and limitations, is not the ultimate reality, even as we acknowledge spirit as the source of all inspiration. The whole range of our creative potential is experienced through spirit, and our spiritual essence is the truth of who we are. Spirit, an omnipresent source of wisdom, clarity, and purpose, is the source from which all of our thoughts, ideas, and inspirations originate, much like light beams from the sun. We can access an endless, never-ending, and profoundly transformational source of inspiration when we accept this realization. Chapter 1. Spirit as the source of all existence. In the Christian Science tradition, the understanding of spirit as the source of all existence is a foundational concept, central to how we perceive life, purpose, and the very nature of being. This idea finds its roots in the belief that God, referred to as spirit, is not just a distant, intangible force, but the very essence and origin of all life, the wellspring from which every living thing flows. Spirit is not limited by the physical or constrained by human definitions of power and presence. Instead, it is infinite, eternal, and omnipresent, encompassing everything that exists. At its core, this view of spirit as the source of all existence calls us to rethink how we understand creation, inspiration, and reality itself. Unlike material perspectives, which might suggest that life is a random or purely physical process, the idea that everything emanates from the spirit provides a richer, more profound understanding of existence. Spirit is the cause of all things, and humanity is seen as a direct expression, an outpouring of this divine source. This concept fundamentally reshapes our relationship to the world around us and to each other. In considering the role of spirit as the origin of all life, we are invited to step beyond the limited view that life is merely a sequence of material events or biological processes. The material world, though often seen as the pinnacle of reality, is viewed through the lens of Christian Science as a mere shadow or limited reflection of the true spiritual reality. Spirit is the substance behind all that is seen and unseen. It is the ultimate cause, the creative force, and the sustaining power of everything in existence. This understanding elevates the purpose of human life. We are not simply material beings moving through a finite existence. We are spiritual beings, inseparable from the divine source. Just as a ray of light cannot be separated from the sun, we cannot be separated from spirit. We are, in essence, the expression of God's infinite creativity and love. To recognize this truth is to recognize our divine nature, a nature that is not subject to the limitations of material existence, but is instead eternal, harmonious, and ever-present. The Bible speaks of this divine relationship in many ways, illustrating how humanity is not just created by God, but is a continuous expression of God's will. In passages like 1 Corinthians 2:14, we are reminded that spiritual truths can only be discerned through the Spirit. This underscores the idea that understanding our connection to God is not something that can be achieved through mere intellectual reasoning or material observation. It requires a shift in perception, a move away from the purely physical and toward the spiritual. The materialist mindset, which focuses on the tangible and the seen, struggles to grasp the profound truth that spirit is the source of all life. This truth can only be understood spiritually. Mary Baker Eddy, the founder of Christian Science, often used powerful analogies to convey the inseparability of humanity and spirit. One such analogy is that of the ocean and a drop of water. She explained that humanity is like a drop of water within the vast ocean of spirit, distinct yet of the same substance. The drop of water is not separate from the ocean. It moves with the ocean's currents, surrounded and sustained by it. This powerful image helps us understand that while we may appear as distinct individuals, we are never separate from God, the divine source. We are part of an endless, harmonious flow of divine life. This way of looking at life gives one a sense of comfort, belonging, and serenity. We start to see that chance, luck, or the dictates of fate do not control our lives when we accept that Spirit is the source of everything. Rather, Spirit's loving, unwavering presence holds us. Spirit gives us food, shelter, and inspiration. When viewed through this spiritual lens, life's hurdles and trials are not insurmountable barriers, but rather chances to enhance our awareness of our relationship with the Spirit and to fully exhibit the divine attributes of creativity, wisdom, and love. Furthermore, realizing that Spirit is the origin of everything alters our outlook on day-to-day living. We start looking for a higher sense of purpose, one that is in line with the will of God, instead of aiming for monetary success or approval from others. Our decisions, deeds, and goals come to represent the boundless Spirit at work within us. Inspiration comes from a higher source and directs us toward lifestyles that are more meaningful, fulfilling, and helpful to others, rather than from personal ambition. This shift in perspective also leads to healing. As we move away from identifying with material limitations and recognize our spiritual nature, we open ourselves to the healing power of the Spirit. In Christian Science, healing is not seen as a miraculous event, but as the natural outcome of understanding our true identity as spiritual beings. When we align ourselves with Spirit, the source of all health, harmony, and life, we experience physical, mental, and emotional renewal. This is a testament to the fact that Spirit is not only the source of life, but also the source of all good. The supremacy of Spirit in all things ultimately affirms that life is eternal, unbounded by the constraints of time or matter. This realization brings a sense of freedom and liberation from the fears and anxieties that often accompany a material view of existence. In recognizing Spirit as the source of all, we see that life is not fragile or fleeting, but a continuous unfolding of divine expression. We are and always will be held in the presence of Spirit, an inseparable part of the infinite whole. Chapter 2. The inseparable connection between Spirit and human being. In exploring the relationship between Spirit and humanity, analogies serve as a powerful tool to bridge the gap between the infinite and the finite, the divine, and the human. Christian Science, which emphasizes the omnipresence and omnipotence of the Spirit, God, frequently uses such analogies to help explain the profound connection between God and humanity. These analogies go beyond intellectual understanding, inviting us to feel and experience the deep unity that exists between us and the divine. Among the most compelling of these are the comparisons of God to the sun, humanity to the rays of light, and God to the ocean, with humanity as individual drops of water. These vivid metaphors stress the inseparability and interconnectedness of the spirit and human beings, offering profound insights into the nature of our existence and our relationship with the divine. The comparison of the sun's rays is among the most often used ones. This metaphor does a fantastic job of explaining how spirit is the source of all life, light, and inspiration, just like the sun. Spirit exudes goodness, love, and inspiration that affects and feeds everything it shines upon, just as the sun does the same. Just as we, as manifestations of spirit, are inseparable from our divine source, so too are the sun's rays from the sun itself. The sun's light and strength are reflected by the rays, which do not exist separately from it. Similarly to this, humans are not separate from God. Rather, they are the very embodiment of the Spirit's boundless creativity, knowledge, and love. This comparison helps us to understand that we are inextricably linked to the Spirit, just like light beams are. Rather than being solitary entities navigating the universe on our own, we are divine mirrors of the boundless source. This knowledge contributes to dispelling the delusion of being apart from God and replacing it with a deep sense of purpose and unity. Our purpose is to radiate the divine light and reveal the attributes of the Spirit, such as kindness, knowledge, and compassion to the world. The idea of God as the ocean and people as its droplets is another potent comparison. This metaphor emphasizes the shared substance between spirit and humankind, further demonstrating their inseparability. Even though it may appear different, a drop of water is fundamentally the same as the ocean it is contained in. It is inextricably linked to the ocean, moving with the current and encircled by its grandeur. Likewise, God and we are composed of the same spiritual matter. Although we are distinct manifestations of spirit, we are always a part of it. The limitless presence of the Spirit sustains, supports, and guides us as we are woven into the divine fabric in an intricate way. This analogy invites us to consider the vastness of spirit and how it encompasses every aspect of our being. Like a drop of water in the ocean, we may feel small or insignificant at times, but we are always part of something far greater than ourselves. The ocean is not diminished by the presence of its individual drops, just as spirit is not lessened by the individuality of humanity. Instead, the diversity of each drop, the diversity of each human being, adds to the richness and fullness of the ocean of spirit. This understanding affirms the value of every individual as a unique, yet inseparable expression of divine life. Both the sunray and ocean drop analogies help us grasp a key spiritual truth. Our connection to the Spirit is not something that can be broken or diminished. Just as a ray cannot cease to be connected to the sun, and a drop cannot be separated from the ocean, we cannot be removed from our divine source. This is a fundamental aspect of our identity as spiritual beings. We are always in the presence of Spirit, always receiving its guidance, support, and inspiration. Even when life's challenges cloud our perception, like clouds blocking the sun's rays, the light of Spirit is always there, shining through, ready to be recognized and embraced. In addition to illustrating our connection to God, these analogies also reveal something important about our purpose. Just as rays of light bring warmth and illumination to the earth, and drops of water contribute to the vitality of the ocean, we too have a role in expressing the qualities of Spirit in the world. Our lives are opportunities to reflect the divine, to bring love, peace, joy, and understanding into our interactions and experiences. When we recognize our connection to the Spirit, we begin to see that our purpose is not self-centered or material, but deeply spiritual. We are here to be instruments of divine grace, to let the light of Spirit shine through us and touch others. This understanding of our purpose as expressions of Spirit leads to a transformative view of life. It shifts our focus from seeking material success or validation to seeking alignment with the divine. When we see ourselves as rays of light from the sun or drops of water in the ocean, we begin to live with greater intention and humility, knowing that our strength, wisdom, and inspiration come from the Spirit, not from personal ambition. This shift brings peace, as we no longer need to strive for something that is already inherently ours, the infinite supply of good from our divine source. In the end, these comparisons serve as a helpful reminder that we are not required to earn or attain our connection to Spirit. The unbreakable link that makes us who we are is already here. We may live more fully in the consciousness of our spiritual identity and purpose by realizing this link, which will enable the boundless love and light of Spirit to pour through us and benefit the environment. By use of these analogies, we are able to comprehend the fundamental oneness that exists between Spirit and humanity, a relationship that upholds, directs, and inspires all facets of our existence. Chapter 3. The Spiritual Nature of Human Being. At the core of Christian Science teachings is the profound assertion that humans are fundamentally spiritual beings. This view stands in stark contrast to the common materialistic perception of life, where human existence is often reduced to physical, biological, and chemical processes. It emphasizes that the material view of existence is a limited and distorted perspective, akin to looking at the world through cracked sunglasses. The cracks in the lens symbolize the misconceptions and illusions that cloud our understanding of who we truly are. To perceive our true nature, to see the world as it really is, we must remove these distortions and embrace the reality of our spiritual existence. This understanding of humanity's spiritual nature invites us to rethink the very foundations of what it means to live and be alive. It asks us to question the deeply ingrained belief that we are mere collections of atoms, subject to the random whims of chance, disease, or mortality. The material view, which defines life by the limitations of the body and the physical world, narrows our sense of self and confines our understanding of our potential. But the spiritual perspective opens up a world of infinite possibilities, where life is not confined by the boundaries of matter, but is instead governed by the eternal, harmonious principles of Spirit. The analogy of cracked sunglasses powerfully illustrates how the material lens distorts our view of reality. When we see the world only through material eyes, we miss the fullness of life that Spirit offers. Everything appears incomplete, fragmented, and fraught with limitations. Just as a dirty or cracked lens skews the clarity of our vision, the material mindset clouds our ability to perceive the truth of our existence. We see only the effects of sickness, decay, or struggle, rather than recognizing the underlying spiritual reality that transcends these conditions. It reminds us that we must take off these sunglasses to witness the truth of our spiritual being. To remove these distortions, we need to shift from a material to a spiritual understanding of life. This process begins with the recognition that what we see, touch, and experience in the physical world is not the ultimate reality. Matter, as perceived through the senses, is transient and ever-changing. It is prone to deterioration, subject to the effects of time, and limited by physical laws. But the spiritual nature of humanity is eternal and unchanging. Spirit, the divine source, is the foundation of all life, and we are its direct expressions. Our true selves are not defined by the limitations of the body, but by the limitless qualities of Spirit, qualities such as love, wisdom, harmony, and creativity. It takes a profound mental shift to comprehend our spiritual nature, a reorientation from the outward to the inside, from the physical to the metaphysical. This is a profoundly transformational process that has an impact on our way of thinking, living, and interacting with the outside world. It is not just a philosophical exercise. Our thinking starts to match the spiritual reality of life, and we start to live a more complete and meaningful life. As we come to understand that we are not constrained by physical circumstances, fear, doubt, and limitation start to fade. Rather, the eternal rules of spirit that guarantee abundance, well-being, and harmony control us. Knowing that we are inseparable from God, the divine spirit, is one of the most significant consequences of realizing our spiritual being. There is nothing outside of this relationship that can destroy it or change it. We are inseparable from spirit, just as a ray of light is inseparable from the sun, and a drop of water is an integral part of the ocean. We are constantly directed, always supported, and always whole because of this divine link. When we genuinely comprehend this, we come to see that the difficulties we encounter in the physical world, disease, poverty, and fear, do not represent who we really are on a spiritual level. These are the illusions caused by the shattered lens, which vanish when we accept the whole reality of our spiritual being. The Bible makes frequent reference to this truth, emphasizing the necessity of seeing past the material world to acknowledge the existence of God. Scriptures like 1 Corinthians 2:14 serve as a reminder that the Spirit is the only one who can discern spiritual truths. The profound essence of spiritual existence is beyond the comprehension of the material mind, which is limited to the physical. We can only start to recognize ourselves as we really are, eternal, flawless, and whole, through spiritual insight. Mary Baker Eddy, the founder of Christian Science, emphasizes that the material view is not just incomplete, but inherently flawed. She describes matter as a distortion, a limited and false representation of reality. To see the world and ourselves clearly, we must let go of this false view and align our thinking with the spiritual truth. This does not mean denying the physical world, but rather understanding that it is not the ultimate reality. The material world is like a shadow of the spiritual, and it is through spiritual understanding that we can begin to see beyond the shadows and experience the fullness of life. As we embrace the spiritual nature of humanity, we begin to live with a greater sense of purpose, peace, and freedom. No longer confined by the limitations of material existence, we are free to express the divine qualities that are inherent in us. We become more loving, more compassionate, and more creative as we reflect the infinite goodness of spirit. This shift in understanding also brings healing. Christian Science teaches that physical healing is a natural outcome of recognizing our spiritual nature. When we see ourselves as spiritual beings, untouched by the limitations of matter, we experience physical, emotional, and mental renewal. Health is restored, harmony is established, and peace is realized. Chapter 4. Spirit as the source of all supply. At the core of understanding spirit as the source of supply is the recognition that all sustenance and provision flow from a divine, infinite source. This concept stands in contrast to the material view that often equates supply with limited resources, where competition and scarcity govern our sense of what is available. When we begin to understand supply from a spiritual perspective, we shift from the belief that resources are finite to the understanding that the Spirit provides for all needs without restriction. This realization calls for a profound shift in consciousness, moving away from dependence on material conditions and embracing the boundless provision of Spirit. The essence of this idea is that Spirit operates beyond the limitations of the material world. Rather than being confined by time, space, or human conditions, the Spirit expresses abundance in all things. This is a deeply transformative perspective, one that encourages us to release the fear of lack and scarcity that often dominates human thought. When we accept Spirit as the infinite provider, we begin to see that we are connected to an unending flow of good, where all our needs are met, no matter the outward circumstances. The notion of Spirit as the source of supply is not limited to physical sustenance like food or shelter. It extends to every area of life, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Spirit sustains us in ways that go beyond the tangible. It provides us with clarity, peace, and the wisdom needed to navigate life's challenges. Just as material resources are replenished through natural cycles, spiritual sustenance is continuously available, ready to nourish and uplift us whenever we need it. This supply is complete and perfect, tailored to meet the unique needs of each individual. This understanding leads to a state of trust. In a world that often appears chaotic and unpredictable, fear of lack can dominate our thinking. We may worry that we don't have enough, whether it's money, time, love, or opportunities, but recognizing Spirit as the source of all good dissolves these fears. We come to understand that we do not need to struggle or compete for resources because we are connected to an infinite supply. Spirit's provision is abundant, ever-present, and perfectly aligned with what is necessary for our growth and well-being. The notion of Spirit as the source of supply is not limited to physical sustenance like food or shelter. It extends to every area of life, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Spirit sustains us in ways that go beyond the tangible. It provides us with clarity, peace, and the wisdom needed to navigate life's challenges. Just as material resources are replenished through natural cycles, spiritual sustenance is continuously available, ready to nourish and uplift us whenever we need it. This supply is complete and perfect, tailored to meet the unique needs of each individual. This understanding leads to a state of trust. In a world that often appears chaotic and unpredictable, fear of lack can dominate our thinking. We may worry that we don't have enough, whether it's money, time, love, or opportunities. But recognizing Spirit as the source of all good dissolves these fears. We come to understand that we do not need to struggle or compete for resources because we are connected to an infinite supply. Spirit's provision is abundant, ever-present, and perfectly aligned with what is necessary for our growth and well-being. To fully experience this provision, we must be open and receptive. This often requires letting go of the preconceived ideas we have about how our needs should be met. Spirit's supply may come in forms we do not expect. Just as nature provides in various ways, sometimes through rain, other times through the sun's warmth, Spirit meets our needs in ways that may surprise us. By maintaining an attitude of openness, we allow Spirit to work in our lives, revealing the abundance that is already present. This understanding of supply encourages a deeper connection to the world around us. As we become aware of Spirit's abundant provision, we see that the natural world too is sustained by the same source. Life in all its forms is supported by this infinite supply. This realization inspires a sense of gratitude and responsibility to care for the resources of the earth, recognizing them not as mere material goods, but as expressions of divine abundance. This mindset fosters stewardship, where we no longer see the world through a lens of scarcity, but as a reflection of the Spirit's endless generosity. When we align ourselves with the idea that Spirit is the source of all supply, we no longer look to external circumstances to dictate our sense of well-being or security. Instead, we turn inward to the understanding that everything we need is already available to us. This recognition brings peace as we come to realize that we are always supported, always guided, and always provided for by a source that knows no limits. Moreover, this perspective on supply transforms our relationships with others. When we see that Spirit provides for all, we are less likely to engage in competitive behaviors or to feel threatened by others' successes. We come to understand that there is enough for everyone, and this abundance mentality allows us to approach life with greater generosity, compassion, and collaboration. When we no longer view resources as finite, we can give freely, knowing that we are part of an infinite flow that will always replenish itself. In moments of doubt, when the world seems to offer only lack or limitation, we can remind ourselves that appearances are not reality. External conditions may suggest scarcity, but the spiritual truth is that supply is endless. This understanding empowers us to move beyond fear and embrace the certainty that the Spirit provides for us in every way. We need only to trust in this truth and open ourselves to the ways in which Spirit's supply manifests in our lives. This understanding also has profound implications for how we approach challenges. When we are faced with difficulties, whether financial, emotional, or physical, the belief in Spirit's endless supply gives us the confidence to move forward with hope. We are not limited by the circumstances we face. Instead, we can draw upon the infinite resources of Spirit to find solutions, heal wounds, and create new opportunities. This is the power of knowing that supply is not something outside of us, but something that flows through us as a direct expression of spirit. Spirit as the source of supply is not a distant or abstract concept, but a living truth that shapes every aspect of our existence. By recognizing that all good flows from the Spirit, we free ourselves from the fear of lack and embrace a life of abundance. This shift in consciousness allows us to see the world through new eyes, eyes that perceive not scarcity, but the infinite, ever-present supply that sustains all life. Whether we are seeking material sustenance, emotional fulfillment, or spiritual growth, Spirit provides, and it does so in ways that are perfect and complete for each of us. All we need is trust, openness, and the willingness to receive. Chapter 5. Oneness with Spirit. The concept of oneness with Spirit is a central theme that runs deeply through spiritual teachings. It speaks to the idea that humanity is not merely a collection of individuals disconnected from their source, but rather an integral part of a greater, infinite whole. This sense of belonging and unity with Spirit provides a foundation for understanding our true identity and purpose. It reaffirms that we are not separate, wandering beings, but rather spiritual expressions of an all-encompassing divine presence that nurtures, sustains, and guides us. The metaphor of a shepherd caring for his flock is often used to illustrate this profound sense of belonging. In this image, the shepherd is a figure of protection, guidance, and unconditional care, never allowing his flock to stray too far or become lost. This metaphor emphasizes that Spirit, like the shepherd, is always present, always aware of each individual, and always ready to provide comfort and security. The shepherd's love for the flock is not conditional on their behavior or worthiness. It is simply a natural expression of the relationship between the shepherd and the sheep. In the same way, our oneness with Spirit is not something we must earn or prove. It is an inherent part of who we are, a divine relationship that exists beyond the limitations of time, space, or circumstance. The connection between a parent and child highlights the nurturing and tender care that Spirit provides for each of us. Just as a parent watches over their children, ensuring their well-being, so too does Spirit envelop us in love and care. This sense of divine parenthood reinforces the idea that we belong to something greater, and that our needs, both spiritual and material, are known and met by the Spirit. A parent does not abandon their child or withhold love based on merit. Instead, the parent's love is constant, unwavering, and wholly invested in the child's growth, happiness, and security. Similarly, the Spirit's care for us is unconditional and all-encompassing, a reflection of the deep oneness that exists between Creator and creation. This understanding of oneness with Spirit also transforms how we view ourselves. In a world where individuality and separation often dominate our sense of identity, recognizing our connection to the Spirit offers a counterpoint. We are not isolated beings, struggling to find our way through life alone. Instead, we are inseparably linked to the infinite source of all goodness and love. This realization brings with it a deep sense of peace, knowing that we are never truly alone or unsupported. Spirit is with us, within us, and around us at all times, providing guidance, strength, and wisdom whenever we need it. Furthermore, this oneness with Spirit speaks to a larger universal truth, that all of humanity shares this same connection. Just as we are one with Spirit, so too are all people. This realization has profound implications for how we interact with others. When we see ourselves as part of a larger spiritual family, it becomes easier to extend compassion, understanding, and love to those around us. We begin to see that the divisions we perceive, whether based on nationality, race, religion, or personal beliefs, are superficial and do not reflect the deeper reality of our shared spiritual nature. This sense of unity encourages us to embrace others as fellow expressions of Spirit, deserving of the same care and respect that we seek for ourselves. The document emphasizes that this sense of belonging to the Spirit is not just a comforting idea, but a transformative truth. When we fully embrace our oneness with Spirit, we open ourselves to a life of greater harmony, fulfillment, and purpose. We stop searching for external validation or material success to define our worth, because we understand that our true value comes from our relationship with the divine. This shift in perspective allows us to live more authentically, expressing the qualities of spirit, love, kindness, wisdom, and creativity in all that we do. Living in awareness of our oneness with spirit also brings healing. The material world often presents us with challenges, illness, fear, insecurity, but when we recognize that we are never separate from the infinite power and goodness of the Spirit, these challenges lose their hold over us. Healing is the natural outcome of understanding our spiritual identity, of knowing that we are not subject to the limitations of the material world. Instead, we are governed by the divine laws of the Spirit, which ensure health, harmony, and peace. This recognition of oneness with the Spirit allows us to rise above fear and doubt, trusting in the power of the Spirit to meet our every need and to guide us toward our highest good. Moreover, this sense of unity with Spirit gives us a greater sense of purpose. We are not here by accident, nor are we merely physical beings living out a predetermined fate. Our lives are filled with meaning, rooted in our relationship with Spirit. We are expressions of divine creativity, placed in this world to reflect the qualities of the Spirit in unique and meaningful ways. Each of us has a purpose, a role to play in the larger unfolding of life, and by recognizing our oneness with Spirit, we are better able to fulfill that purpose with grace and confidence. Chapter 6. The Eternality of Spirit. The idea of the Spirit as eternal, without beginning or end, is one of the most awe-inspiring aspects of understanding our spiritual nature. It points to the boundless, infinite nature of existence that transcends the limits of time and space. Spirit is not bound by the constraints of birth or death, nor does it follow the linear progression of time as humans experience it. It simply is. An eternal, harmonious presence that exists beyond the physical universe. This concept of Spirit's eternality offers profound insights into the true nature of existence, showing that Spirit is not subject to the fluctuations or limitations that characterize material life. This view of the Spirit as eternal stands in stark contrast to the material understanding of life, which is often framed in terms of beginnings and endings, cycles of birth and decay. In the material world, everything appears finite. Living beings are born. They grow old and eventually they die. Time seems to march forward relentlessly, carrying all things toward an inevitable conclusion. However, when we consider existence from the perspective of Spirit, these material limitations fall away. Spirit, by its very nature, is timeless, unchanging, and infinite. It was never created, and it will never cease to be. In this way, Spirit represents a higher, more complete form of existence, one that transcends the narrow confines of material understanding. The concept of frictionless being is a compelling way to illustrate the nature of the Spirit's eternal existence. In the material world, forces such as friction, resistance, and opposition are part of daily life. Whether it's the physical resistance of objects moving through space or the emotional and mental challenges that individuals face, life often feels like a series of obstacles to be overcome. However, the idea of frictionless being suggests a state of existence where these forces of opposition simply do not exist. Spirit operates without resistance or limitation. It moves freely, effortlessly, in a state of perfect harmony, unaffected by the physical or emotional challenges that seem so prevalent in the material world. This frictionless existence is more than a metaphor. It reflects the very nature of Spirit's eternal, unopposed operation. Spirit's being is unbounded by the constraints of material life. It moves in perfect harmony with itself, free from any force that could hinder or diminish its expression. In this state, there is no struggle, no decay, and no conflict. Spirit simply is, in a state of perpetual, perfect being. This concept speaks to the idea of eternal life, not as an extension of material existence, but as a higher state of existence where time, decay, and opposition do not hold sway. Harmony in a spiritual sense is also reflected in the concept of a frictionless being. Harmony is frequently viewed in the material world as something that must be attained, as a balance that needs to be preserved in the face of conflicting forces. Harmony, however, is the inherent state of being in the domain of spirit and does not require effort. No element or power can ever be able to defy the spirit or disrupt its eternal calm. Spirit is a condition of eternal harmony and balance in which everything is in line with the will of God. This insight asks us to see life as a chance to align ourselves with this eternal harmony that the Spirit expresses, rather than as a series of obstacles to be conquered. Jesus' life serves as the ultimate example of this idea of frictionless eternal existence, because he showed how the Spirit remains eternal even in the face of material constraints. Jesus' life and deeds offer a potent illustration of how a frictionless being functions within the context of human experience. Jesus demonstrated throughout his mission that the eternal nature of the Spirit was impervious to the powers of material limitation, such as illness, death, and lack. He did not overcome these worldly conditions by healing the sick, raising the dead, or multiplying food. Rather, he showed them to be irrelevant in the presence of the Spirit's eternal, harmonious nature. By doing this, Jesus made it clear that the eternal essence of the Spirit is a live reality that can be experienced right now, rather than a far-off or abstract idea. The eternal, frictionless nature of Spirit also has profound implications for how we view our own lives. If the Spirit is eternal and we are expressions of the Spirit, then our true nature is also eternal. This means that the limitations we perceive in our material lives, whether they be physical, emotional, or temporal, are not reflections of our true identity. Instead, they are distortions, illusions that arise from viewing life through a material lens. By aligning ourselves with the eternal nature of Spirit, we begin to see ourselves not as finite beings bound by time and circumstance, but as eternal expressions of divine life. This understanding brings a sense of peace and assurance, as we come to realize that our existence is not fragile or fleeting, but grounded in the timeless, unchanging nature of Spirit. Furthermore, the eternal nature of the Spirit challenges us to rethink our relationship with time. In the material world, time is often seen as a force that diminishes, erodes, and eventually ends all things. People age, opportunities pass, and life itself seems to slip away as time marches forward. But when we understand that Spirit is eternal, we realize that time is not the ultimate authority over our lives. Spirit exists beyond time, and as expressions of Spirit, so do we. This shift in perspective frees us from the anxiety that often accompanies the passage of time. Instead of fearing the loss of youth, vitality, or opportunity, we can trust that Spirit's eternal nature ensures that all good is always present and available to us. Chapter 7. The Healing Power of Spirit. Imagine living in a world where healing is not dependent on external remedies, but on an understanding of your spiritual nature, a realm where physical and mental well-being flows naturally from recognizing your deep connection with the divine. This is the world that the healing power of the Spirit invites us to embrace, a world in which sickness and suffering are not inevitable facts of life, but illusions that can be dispelled through spiritual insight. The teachings of Christian Science firmly hold that healing occurs not by addressing the physical symptoms, but by recognizing and aligning with the spiritual truth of our existence. The belief that Spirit holds the key to true healing is both ancient and profound. It finds its roots in the understanding that as spiritual beings, we are not subject to the limitations of the physical body, and that our well-being is governed by spiritual laws, not material conditions. The healing stories from sacred texts illustrate this transformative power vividly. One such example is the account of a woman who suffered from a chronic issue for 12 years. Her physical suffering was profound, and by all material standards there was no remedy left for her. Yet, in her moment of spiritual clarity, she reached out in faith, believing that healing was possible, and she was immediately restored to health. This story transcends the mere act of physical healing. It is a testament to the fact that healing comes when we recognize our true spiritual identity, an identity untouched by the ravages of disease, fear, or material conditions. The woman's act of faith was not simply a belief in a miraculous cure. It was the recognition of a deeper truth, that her real nature was spiritual and therefore whole and complete. This recognition allowed her to overcome the physical manifestation of disease, a powerful reminder that healing begins with a shift in consciousness. The healing power of the Spirit is not limited to extraordinary biblical stories. It is a living truth, accessible to everyone. It challenges the prevailing notion that we are at the mercy of physical ailments or mental distress, offering instead the understanding that our true state is one of harmony, peace, and well-being. When we view ourselves as spiritual beings, we open the door to a healing force that transcends physical conditions. This doesn't mean that the pain or symptoms are imagined, but rather that they are distortions, false appearances that disappear when confronted with the reality of Spirit's perfection. What makes the healing power of Spirit so compelling is its promise of freedom. It offers freedom from the belief that sickness is an unavoidable part of life, or that we are helpless in the face of disease. The principles of Christian Science teach that healing comes not from outside ourselves, but from within, through a deepening understanding of our spiritual nature. As we cultivate this understanding, the mental and emotional barriers that contribute to illness begin to fall away, and we experience restoration on every level. Consider the power of thought. Science has shown us time and again that the mind has a profound influence on the body. Stress, fear, and anxiety can manifest as physical illness, while hope, joy, and peace can lead to physical well-being. The healing power of the Spirit takes this understanding one step further. It reveals that when we align our thoughts with spiritual truth, when we focus on the reality of our divine nature, healing naturally follows. This isn't wishful thinking, it is the application of spiritual law. Just as light dispels darkness, the recognition of spiritual truth dissolves the false beliefs that cause suffering. Think about how Jesus exemplified this healing power during his entire ministry. He was able to revive the dead, heal the ill, and give sight to the blind because he had a firm grasp on the spiritual reality of life, rather than a shallow or material concept of health. Jesus was aware that there was more to reality than the corporeal world, with all of its hardships and constraints. Healing resulted from his realization that every person was a whole, complete mirror of spirit, and that realization alone. What does this mean for us now, though? It implies that extraordinary people or unique occasions are not the only ones who can benefit from the healing power of the Spirit. Each of us has access to it at this precise moment. By expanding our spiritual awareness, we can access the same divine law that Jesus used to heal people. This law is still in effect in our lives today. We experience healing on all levels, physical, mental, and emotional, when we start to perceive ourselves as spiritual beings guided by divine law as opposed to physical circumstances. This understanding calls for a radical shift in how we approach health and well-being. Instead of turning outward to find solutions to our problems, we are invited to turn inward, to recognize the inherent perfection of our spiritual nature. The healing power of Spirit reminds us that we are not defined by the limitations of the body, nor are we subject to the random occurrences of disease or misfortune. We are, at our core, spiritual beings, and as such, we have access to an infinite well of healing and renewal. Perhaps the most transformative aspect of this truth is the peace that it brings. When we recognize that our health, our happiness, and our sense of well-being are rooted in spirit, we are no longer tossed about by the uncertainties of the material world. We no longer live in fear of illness or decline, because we know that our true nature is eternal and untouched by the frailties of the body. This doesn't mean that we ignore our physical needs or deny the reality of illness when it occurs. Rather, it means that we approach healing from a place of spiritual understanding, knowing that true and lasting healing comes not from treating the symptoms, but from recognizing the underlying spiritual truth. Chapter 8. Awareness and Revelation of Spirit. Imagine realizing that the true essence of life isn't hidden away, but rather waiting to be discovered through your awareness of Spirit. This shift in perspective can be life-changing, revealing a world where physical limitations fall away and the fullness of existence becomes clear. Spirit continuously reveals itself to us, offering insight into the deeper realities that transcend the material world. This isn't something far off or reserved for a select few. It's a universal, accessible experience. Through Christ, understood as the divine influence in our lives, we can experience the Spirit making itself known and bringing us closer to the truth of who we are. Christ represents more than a historical figure. It's the manifestation of divine influence, the way the Spirit becomes tangible in the world. It's through this influence that we begin to understand the spiritual nature of our lives. When we become aware of the Spirit, when we let this revelation shape how we think and act, everything starts to change. The limitations that once seemed overwhelming, whether it's illness, fear, or lack, start to lose their grip. Instead, we find abundance, health, and peace flowing effortlessly from Spirit. This awakening isn't just about gaining intellectual knowledge. It's an experience, a deep inner recognition of a reality that's always been there but might have been clouded by our material perceptions. It's like having a veil lifted, allowing us to see with clarity for the first time. The world around us remains the same, but our understanding of it changes dramatically. We begin to see that Spirit is the source of all that's real, and that everything we truly need, love, wisdom, guidance, and well-being, comes from this divine source. Living in alignment with the Spirit means more than just understanding this intellectually. It means letting this truth guide our lives. As we do, we tap into a deeper flow of life, one where everything feels more harmonious and purposeful. Life no longer seems like a series of random events or challenges to overcome, but rather a seamless unfolding of divine purpose. Each moment becomes an opportunity to witness Spirit at work, to feel its love, and to experience its guidance and support. One of the most powerful aspects of this spiritual revelation is the way it helps us understand ourselves. So often, we define ourselves by our physical bodies, our circumstances, or the roles we play in society. But the Spirit reveals a greater truth. We are spiritual beings, expressions of the infinite divine presence. This realization is profoundly freeing. It allows us to step beyond the limitations of material thinking and recognize the endless possibilities that life holds. Suddenly, life feels expansive, full of potential and meaning. This awareness of Spirit also brings a deep sense of peace. When we understand that Spirit is the source of all life, we no longer have to live in fear of what might happen or what we might lack. We realize that we are always connected to an infinite source of good, a source that is constantly providing for us, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. This understanding removes the struggle and anxiety that often accompany life in the material world. Instead of constantly striving or worrying, we can rest in the assurance that Spirit's plan is unfolding perfectly and that we are always cared for. As we become more aware of Spirit, we also start to see others differently. Recognizing our own spiritual nature helps us see that everyone else is also a spiritual being, connected to the same divine source. The barriers that often divide us, whether they're based on race, religion, class, or personal beliefs, begin to dissolve. We realize that we're all connected, all part of the same spiritual family. This brings a natural sense of compassion and love for others. We no longer see people as competitors or strangers, but as fellow travelers on the same spiritual journey, all seeking the same truth and connection. This revelation of Spirit isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. As we continue to live in alignment with spiritual truth, our awareness deepens. Every day presents new opportunities to witness the Spirit in action, to experience its healing power, and to grow in our understanding of its presence in our lives. This continuous revelation is a source of joy and fulfillment, reminding us of our connection to something eternal, something that is always guiding and sustaining us. When we fully embrace this awareness, it changes everything. We no longer look to the material world for our sense of identity or security. Instead, we look within, to the Spirit that sustains us. We realize that life's challenges are not insurmountable obstacles but opportunities to deepen our connection with the divine. And with this understanding, we experience a life filled with harmony, peace, and a profound sense of purpose. Spirit's revelation isn't distant or abstract. It's alive and active, showing us the way to live a more meaningful and fulfilling life. In the end, becoming aware of the Spirit and allowing its revelation to guide us is transformative. It's about understanding that we are not just physical beings, we are spiritual beings, expressions of something far greater than ourselves. As we align with this truth, we experience life in its fullest form, free from fear, filled with peace, and connected to the infinite good that flows from the Spirit. This awareness is always available to us, offering a path to a deeper understanding of life and a richer, more joyful existence. Epilogue. As we journey through the understanding of Spirit, its eternality, its power to heal, and its ability to reveal the true nature of existence, a transformative truth becomes clear. Life is far richer, deeper, and more profound than what material appearances suggest. The revelation of the Spirit invites us to step beyond the limitations of the physical world and awaken to a reality governed by divine intelligence, where peace, abundance, and harmony are not fleeting ideals, but natural outcomes aligning with spiritual truth. In recognizing Spirit as the source of all existence, we begin to see ourselves as inseparable from the divine. We are not isolated beings struggling to navigate life's challenges, but expressions of an infinite loving force that sustains, guides, and provides for us in every moment. This realization brings a profound sense of belonging, a knowing that we are not alone in our journey, but are deeply connected to a source that is eternal, frictionless, and boundless in its generosity. The healing power of the Spirit reminds us that well-being is not confined to physical remedies or external solutions. True healing begins within, as we acknowledge our spiritual nature and allow this understanding to dissolve the illusions of sickness, fear, and lack. Through this lens, every moment becomes an opportunity for renewal, as Spirit continuously reveals its power to restore and uplift. Spirit's eternal nature frees us from the anxieties of time and material decay. It assures us that life in its truest sense is unending, governed by divine principles that ensure harmony and balance. By embracing this truth, we liberate ourselves from the fear of mortality and open our hearts to the infinite possibilities that the Spirit offers. As we become more aware of Spirit's presence in our lives, we also begin to see the interconnectedness of all people. The divisions that often separate us fade as we realize that we all share the same divine origin. This awareness fosters compassion, understanding, and a deep respect for one another, reminding us that we are all part of a greater whole, united by our connection to Spirit. Ultimately, the journey of spiritual understanding is one of continuous revelation. Each day offers new insights into the nature of life and the divine, leading us to a deeper appreciation of the infinite good that surrounds us. As we live in alignment with this truth, we experience life in its fullest form, rich with meaning, purpose, and a profound sense of peace. In the end, the truths explored here are not abstract ideas, but living principles that can transform our daily lives. By embracing the awareness of the Spirit, recognizing its eternal nature, and trusting in its healing power, we open ourselves to a life of greater joy, fulfillment, and harmony. This is the ultimate gift of Spirit, a life lived in full awareness of the divine, where every moment is an expression of infinite love, wisdom, and grace.